All right, David Packouz, thank you so much, brother, for joining us on the Jason Wright Show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor, and I gotta tell you, so like what we were talking about before I hit record, your story is it's almost unbelievable. I mean, watching War Dogs, I'm like, this is crazy. But I don't want this to be just another interview about you retelling this
Mhm.
movie, and you being the one of the main characters, or rather, the Miles Teller character is playing you. You're the real life guy. I definitely wanna talk about the movie because it's so fascinating, the story. I mean, you've gotta have just a million stories and kinda go through the what's fact, what's fiction, what's, Hollywood
Mhm.
drama, what's real. But more than anything, man, and I thought this when I watched the movie, you and Ephraim, I look at you guys as just a couple of hustlers, just entrepreneurs. You're trying to figure
Mhm.
stuff out, and I had such great admiration for that because I'm one of these guys that I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I had my first business when I was, like, 13, cutting grass, and then it's funny because I actually started buying and selling guns from a particular pawn shop when I was
Mhm.
about 17.
Oh, wow.
These guys, they were like, they would go buy all these surplus 357s from a police station in Chicago, bring them down, and
Mhm.
I would buy them for like, I think I paid 175 bucks for them and sold
Mhm.
them for like 225. I thought I was big time. You go and land a
Yeah.
$300 million freaking contract with
Yeah.
with the US government, so there's just
Yeah.
so many places we could go with this, but the first thing I wanna do is just kinda get to know you and kinda your background growing up, and let's start with the entrepreneurial side, this hustler side of you.
Mhm.
When did that start? What was your first, like, real business? And kinda just take us from there.
Mhm. Well, I started the business hustle, quite early. My first business was when I was, 6 years old. My dad, it was my dad's suggestion, and the way that happened was, I was, living in Israel at the time in Jerusalem, and, we were living in a old apartment building that didn't have an elevator. It also didn't have a garbage chute, so you'd have to take your trash out, down the stairs, out to the corner, to the dumpster on the corner. And my mother asked me and my older sister. I was 6, my older sister was 7. She asked us to take the trash out, and we were complaining, because the trash is heavy and took work. and my dad comes into the kitchen and he sees us complaining to our mother, and our mother's kind of like getting annoyed at us, telling us to stop complaining and take the trash out. And our dad looks at us and he's like, you guys are like looking at this all wrong. This is not a chore. This is an opportunity. And we're like, what are you talking about? And he says, well, we live in an apartment building, and I bet you none of our neighbors like taking the trash out either. So if you could go to them and say, hey, I'll take your trash out for a fee. People don't usually take the trash out every day. So you could take it out every other day and charge them maybe a fee per week, like maybe a quarter or something. And we said, "Huh, that's pretty good idea. That's we can actually make some money like that." So he's like, "Okay, great. Now why don't you practice your new business skills and take your mother's trash out?"
Nice.
and so we said, "Okay, fine." So we took out the trash for our mom, and then we went to all the neighbors in our building and we made them the offer, and we signed up um, 6 or I don't know, it's like 7 or 8 neighbors, uh, and, we started taking the trash out. We had this big cart, this big metal cart on these wheels that, we borrowed from our mother, and we would put the trash in there and, roll the thing down the stairs, out to the dumpster. And after the first week, we told our dad, this is like a lot of work. It's very, very backbreaking work. We're not really sure that we really want to do it because it's just too much work, not enough money. He's like, well, what if you made double the money? Would you want to do it then? And we're like, well, maybe for double the money, it would be worth it. And he says, well, in that case, why don't you just tell your customers that you raise the price? And now it's twice the price. And we said, but we're doing this for 1 week. We can't just raise the price. We just told them last week it's a quarter. We can't just tell them it's 50 cents. And he's like, well, if you don't raise the price, you're not going to do the work. So they could either pay the new price or you're going to quit anyway. So we said, oh, that's true. And so we told all the neighbors, and one neighbor quit. And from then on, only one out of seven quit. And from then on, we saw their daughter take the trash out. Because I guess they figured, why are we paying the neighbors' kids to take our trash out? We've got a perfectly healthy kid of our own. We'd never seen her take the trash out before, but once they quit our service, their daughter took the trash out from then on. And then another neighbor complained about the price hike. He was like, in classic Israeli fashion, he's like, you can't just double the price. This is crazy. This week you maybe raise it 5 cents. Next week maybe 10 cents. Double. This is crazy. What you do? And we're like, we just stuck to our guns. We're like, well, this is the new price. And he's like, okay, fine. And he just paid it with some grumbling, but he paid it. So we did this for another few weeks, and then after that, my sister decided that it was too much work for her, and she didn't want to do it anymore. And I realized, hey, I just got another doubling of my salary, so I kept on doing it for another few months, and I built up quite a bit of quarters. Would keep it in a little Ziploc bag in my parents' room. And every day the ice cream truck would come around with this little ice cream song. And as a 6-year-old, I'd think to myself, I've got money. I could buy myself an ice cream. And my parents would never buy me ice cream. So this was like a special thing. And I'd go out there and buy myself a little ice cream. And it got to the point where I remember I had I would pretty much buy myself an ice cream every day from my earnings. And it got to the point where my aunt came visiting from the United States. My parents are Americans, so our family, is based mostly in America. My aunt came from the United States, and she looked at me and she's like, "Huh, you're gaining a little bit of weight." I guess all that ice cream, it started to affect my 6-year-old self. And the way that business eventually ended was my brother asked. I got a birthday gift from my dad when I turned 7 of this little toy airplane. Had this like little propeller powered by a rubber band where you wind it up and then you throw it and it flies for a little bit. And it was made out of styrofoam. And my older brother, who was 3 years older than me, so he was 10, he asked me to play with it. And I said, sure, you could play with it, but if you break it, you have to pay for a new one. And he said, absolutely. And our father was right there. And he's like, our father, will be my witness that I commit to paying for it if I break it. And of course, on the first throw, it shattered and he broke it. But of course, he had no way to pay me back. So our dad suggested that he take over my garbage collecting business to pay me back. And it took him like a good month to earn enough money to pay back for that airplane. And at that point, I was already used to not doing the work, and I had already a whole bunch of quarters saved up, so I could still buy my ice cream without getting back to work. And so I let the business die. But yeah, that was my first entrepreneurial venture as a 6-year-old. It was all about the ice cream.
It's funny because I taught one of my daughters, my youngest Abby, who's probably of the two girls. Both girls are hard workers, but Abby's always been kind of
Mhm.
the entrepreneur of the two.
Mhm.
And so I owned a real estate firm, and I let her set up a snack cell at
Mhm.
the kitchen of the office I owned here. And man, she learned more. Like I was her venture capitalist. I said, okay, I will loan you the money for the
Mhm.
inventory. I'm going to show you. Here's how you price your candy bars and your chips and stuff.
Mhm.
And she was about 6 years old, about the same age,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she learned more from that little experience that she carried with her. And there's something about being a young child and just understanding the respect for like the airplane issues,
Mhm.
learning how to appreciate money and realizing
Mhm.
that, there are things that I can do that people exchange money for. I think, and I don't think enough people do
Mhm.
that these days. So that's really cool. So what took
Yeah,
you guys to
agreed.
Israel? Was your dad's job or what? And what was it
Yeah,
like living in Israel?
my dad was a rabbi,
Okay.
so yeah, so he went there for work. he worked for a big Jewish educational organization, and they were based in Israel, and so that's why we were kind of like back and forth. Um, and yeah, Israel. I grew up in Jerusalem. I was born in the United States, but lived in Jerusalem from when I was a baby until I was about 8 years old, and then we moved to Miami. Israel is a very interesting place. It's got a lot of history, a lot of diverse types of people, a lot of tension in the air. So,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily want to live there full time myself these days, but I do have a lot of family that still lives there, and so my mom still lives there, and half of my siblings still live there too. I'm one of 9 children, just
Oh,
so
really?
you have
Oh,
some
wow.
context. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Well, all right.
yeah.
So then how old are you whenever you come back to the States?
I was 8 years old when
Okay.
we moved
So,
to
so,
Miami.
so, so 2 years after your first big trash
Yeah.
hauling enterprise.
Yes, exactly.
And so when does Ephraim come into your life? I got to ask that.
Yeah, so I met Ephraim, for those who don't know, he's the character played by Jonah Hill in the War Dogs movie. I met him when I was about 16 years old, and he's 4 years younger than me, so he was about 12. And I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish family, and so did he. We were part of the same community, so our families went to the same synagogue. We didn't go to the same school, though we both went to Orthodox Jewish schools. But since we went to the same synagogue and neither of us particularly liked to pray, we would sneak out of the synagogue during prayers and hang out on the basketball courts. And I was hanging out with friends of mine who were about 2 years younger than me, and they were friends with him, and so that's kind of how he came into my social circle, so to speak.
Okay, so that's how you guys meet, but then I know he goes off, and by the way, I'm gonna set all this up for the listener. I'm actually gonna show,
Hmm.
and for those of you listening, you'll hear a trailer of the movie, and then we'll
Hmm.
kinda talk through some stuff like that, but I just wanna kinda put the timeline together here because I know that he goes off, you guys part. Now, what happens, like, you enter adulthood, and then you start working, and kinda take us to what you're doing leading up to Ephraim coming back into your life, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden the craziest adventure I gotta believe of your life ensues. So kinda
Yeah,
what does that look like up during that time between, you guys going to school together and then all of a sudden him coming back? What are you doing at that point?
sure. So, I went after high school. I went to Israel for 2 years to study. My parents wanted me to become more religious. It didn't work, but I had a good time in Israel, and came back to the United States. Went to university. I was studying chemistry. I also got a massage therapy license because I realized that it was I could make doing in 1 hour, doing a massage. I could make more than all my friends were making an entire day working at like a restaurant or at a store or something. Doing minimum wage work. So and of course, the girls always like to hear that you're a licensed massage therapist. So that definitely helped. Um, also started a few online businesses. At the time, digital cameras were getting to be really big, and you needed an SD card. So I was looking for a high capacity SD card, and it turned out that those were kind of expensive. So I kept on looking for better deals online, and eventually came across companies in China who were selling them in bulk for a lot cheaper. And so I bought a whole bunch of them and started selling them on eBay, and started making a decent amount of money doing that. SD cards are a great business because it doesn't take up much room. They're easy to ship. Um, and I and so while I was doing that, a friend of mine who his dad owned a nursing home, and his dad was getting him into the business of supplying nursing homes, not just his own, but his other nursing homes in the industry. So he had heard about me doing this SD card business, and he's like, "Hey, it looks like you know how to find sources overseas and bring them in. So if I'm actually doing this nursing home distribution supply business. So if you can find better prices overseas for these items, it was mostly like bed sheets and towels and patient gowns and things like that that nursing homes use. He's like, I'm happy to buy from you rather than the distributors. And so I looked online and did a whole bunch of research and eventually found better prices for him than he was getting. And so I started supplying nursing homes, not just him, but some other distributors as well. So I was importing containers of bed sheets and towels. Um, when that little bit makes it into the movie, though, of course
Hmm.
they change it. I was just importing containers and shipping them directly to distributors. I was not going from nursing home to nursing home directly with samples or anything like that. Uh, but of course, they needed to make my life look a lot harder in the movie. So there's a bigger difference when Ephraim makes me the offer to join him in business. So um, anyway, so I was doing these things, and then I bump into Ephraim at a mutual friend's house. I hadn't seen him in like a few years. He had been when he was 16, he was kicked out of the private Jewish religious school that he had been going to because he'd been caught smoking weed. And his parents said, well, if you're not serious about taking the rules of the school seriously, we're going to put you out into the real world and you're going to go work for your uncle. And his uncle, who was based in LA, had this big pawn shop in South Central LA. And one of the things his uncle did was he would sell supplies to the local and state police. He would sell handguns, bulletproof vests, things like that. And so Ephraim got obsessed with guns. He became like a total gun guy, as they call it, like someone who's just obsessed with guns, knows everything about guns. And he was buying and selling used guns on the gun boards online. And so he got to know the market really well. He did this for a couple of years. He learned how to bid on government contracts with his uncle. And then after about 2 years working with his uncle when he was 18, he claims his uncle screwed him out of a whole bunch of money. His uncle claims that he screwed him out of a whole bunch of money. I believe both of them. They're both scumbags, you know? So, uh, Ephraim decides to leave and come back to Miami and start his own. His dad already had this company, the AEY, that he wasn't using for anything. He had started it a few years before to use as like a label printing business. So he took over that company and registered it with the federal government and started bidding on federal contracts. And this was in 2005. So this was 2004, 2005. And so this was right after the invasion of Iraq, where the United States had gone in and destroyed Saddam Hussein. And then the idea was that we were going to build up a democratic government there. And the US government was pretty much footing the bill for all of that. So part of building up a democratic government was building up their police force and their military. And so the United States was buying all the equipment to do that. And so there was just massive amounts of things that the United States was looking to buy and send to Iraq. And he started winning a whole bunch of contracts. After about a year of working on his own, we bumped into each other. And he asked me what I was doing these days. And I told him about my SD card business and my bed sheets and linens business that I was doing importing and all that. And he's like, that's actually really similar to a lot of the stuff I do. Looking for suppliers overseas, arranging logistics, dealing with licensing, negotiating, all those things. That's pretty much all the stuff I'm doing. But I bet you I'm making way more money than you. So maybe you should join me in business. I could actually use a partner. I could use someone who I trust. Known you for most of our lives. And, I know you're a hard worker, smart guy. So if, maybe we could be, you could join me in my business and we could make even more money together. And I told him, well, how much money you been making? And, and he's like, well, I'm going to tell you, but only to inspire you. I'm not showing off here, okay?
Right.
So he opens up his laptop and he logs in to his bank account and he shows me his bank account and he had $1.8 million in the bank in cash. And he was 18 years old at the time.
Oh my
And
God.
and I was like, holy crap, he's been working for less than a year on his own by himself. I know his family, so I know his parents didn't give him that money or anything. I knew he earned it. I was like, well, this guy obviously knows how to make a lot of money in a business, and he's doing a lot better than me, that's for sure. I mean, I wasn't doing badly, but definitely wasn't in the millions of dollars range. So I thought, well, this is a huge opportunity. He knows something I don't, that's for sure. And so I said, okay, I'm in. Teach me what you know. I'll do this. And so he started teaching me how all the federal contracting system works, and about guns, and which I didn't. I've never been a gun guy or anything like that, so I was not not educated at all in the gun business. So he started teaching me about that, and about how to bid on contracts with the federal government, and all the licensing that's required for these kinds of contracts and these kind of items and all that. And that's how I got into it.
Wow. All right. And so, which makes for a perfect setup. So, for the
Yeah.
listeners, I'm going to play the trailer, and you can go back and watch it on the YouTube channel. For those of you watching, I want to tee this up, and let's just see what that was the seed that was planted for what would eventually become this. Get this here.
Frankly, we were tad concerned with your performance history against a deal of this size.
But after meeting you two face to face, we feel like we're in good hands on this one.
We won't let you down.
Sirs. Not to mention, the bid was far too attractive for us to pass up.
What did you mean by that exactly?
He means you boys lowballed the entire industry.
Yeah. By how much?
You guys came in $53 million lower than the nearest competition.
Now, I got to ask: is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So what do you? So you guys are
Yeah.
just sitting there going, "You'd seen 1.8. That would have blown my
Yeah.
mind." And here
Yeah.
you're hearing, "Oh my God, we left $53 million on the table."
Yeah. So that number is accurate, but the where we found out about it was not like this. It wasn't like in a big meeting with the Pentagon. That's more dramatic to make it like that in the movie. No, it's actually illegal for them to tell us that. They were not
Okay.
allowed to tell us
Yeah.
how much money we came in under the next bidder. Yeah, the government keeps bids secret because that way
Sure.
everyone's maximally competitive and gives the best price to the government in theory. The way we found out, I was actually talking to one of the contracting officers from the Army on the phone, and we were, we work a lot together because it was a very big contract, so we had gotten pretty friendly. And he made some joke. He's like, "Yeah, I mean, you guys really kicked ass there in the bidding." And I was like, "Oh, really? How well did we do?" And he's like, "Listen, this is off the record. I can't really tell you this, but
Oh my
you guys
God.
came in 53 million under the next lowest bidder, and all the major Fortune 500 companies like ATK Systems, General Dynamics, they were way over. I mean, they're like the multi-billion-dollar companies who we were competing against and who we beat. Um, they were like 100 to 200 million more than us.
Oh
So
my.
we were like almost like 50% lower than some of the major competitors. So yeah,
Oh.
we had beaten them by quite a lot.
So, but were you really in meetings like this? Was it like a formal meeting like this? You two knuckleheads sitting at the
Yeah.
end of a table
So
with these supposed, government leaders?
so this meeting did happen
Okay.
at the it wasn't at the Pentagon, it was at Rock Island Arsenal, which is in Illinois. That's where a lot of the contracting is done out of, I should say administered by the US by the Army.
Okay.
And I was not at that meeting because Ephraim. So before they awarded us the $300 million contract, they asked us to come to a meeting. I guess they wanted to see us face to face before they awarded us such a big contract. And Ephraim, who's 4 years younger than me, he obviously wanted to go to he's the president of the company, so he had to go to the meeting. But he felt like we needed someone who was he was 21 years old at the time, I think. Yeah, he was 21. So he felt like he needed someone who was a little bit older and more respectable looking than me. So he decided to bring Ralph Merrill, who in the movie is played by the older Jew who owns the laundry,
Right.
the laundromats, and he's our investor. And in real life, he was our investor, but he was not a Jew and he didn't own laundromats. His name was Ralph, but he was actually a Mormon who owned a machine gun factory.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he's a little bit more relevant. He's actually how we got in contact with Heinrich Tomei, who's the guy played by Bradley Cooper. He introduced us to him. So that's how we got that contact, which is also a little different than how they show in the movie. But yeah, so Ephraim took Ralph to that meeting in Rock Island Arsenal and did have a meeting like this with all the contracting officers over there.
That's crazy. Okay, let's keep this going.
Yeah.
And Jonah Hill just,
Okay.
I don't know how much Ephraim's really like Jonah Hill, but Jonah Hill, I love him in this role.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
to a question that still has no clear answer. How did two 20-something young men land a $300 million Pentagon contract?
I have a big idea.
Hey,
They call guys like us war dogs, bottom feeders who make money off of war without ever stepping foot on the battlefield.
so you don't
It was meant to be derogatory, but we kind of liked it.
go play fit.
Sorry. Excuse
Kind
me.
of an emergency.
Sorry. Don't worry. I have to go first. I'm American.
Which I gotta say, I love that. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just such a perfect line going through an airport. All right, so one of
Yeah.
the things though, right here, for those of you who aren't watching this,
Yeah.
but you're just listening, you guys are, it looks like you're in the Middle East
Mhm.
at this point.
Yeah.
So were you making trips over for to the Middle East in these kind of these war zones and having to negotiate some of these deals?
So we did do a lot of traveling, and I've been to I grew up in Israel, so
Sure.
I've been all over the Middle East. But most of the things we were doing were not in war zones.
Okay.
So we were much more on the business side. So we would go to uh, to um, uh, to exhibitions and trade shows.
Yep.
So we've been to trade shows like in Paris, India, South Africa, around the world, but not actually in war zones.
Okay.
So this, I will say, just to go back a little bit to what you said before, Jonah Hill in the movie is actually a much more toned down version of Ephraim.
Oh dear Lord.
Yeah.
God
yeah,
bless you,
yeah.
brother, for having to
Yeah.
deal with a partner like that then.
Oh, he was insane. Like he was really, really crazy. They actually, so I talked to the screenwriter who was writing the script for War Dogs, and he told me, after I told him all our stories and everything, he's like, look, if I write Ephraim the way Ephraim really is, it's not believable.
It's crazy.
He's like, I need to tone him down to make him more believable and to make him more likable, because he was I haven't talked to him in quite a whole bunch of years, but he was quite a sociopath, and just like not someone that you really wanted to like hang around once you like got to know him. So yeah, he had to tone him down to make him more likable so that the audience would bond with him a little bit more.
And whenever you're going through that, all right, so how are you dealing with this? Was it just because you had to make
Yeah.
now at this point, are you married at this point when you start this? Or honestly, I can't remember
Mhm.
whenever you get married and then you guys have a child, I think your first child.
Yeah.
When does that happen in the midst
Yeah.
of this?
So my daughter was born actually just a few weeks after we won the big contract, the $300 million contract. So yeah. So in the lead up to this, when we were trying to win it, my daughter was on the way.
So that's what
yeah.
I'm thinking. So are you just kind of under the
Yeah.
pressure, so you're willing to tolerate Ephraim?
Yes,
Got it.
exactly. I was under a huge amount of pressure because this was, I realized I had to support a kid that was coming very soon, and I was all in on this, and so yeah, I guess that probably influenced some of my decision making, that to take bigger risks than I should have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's
Yeah.
keep this going a little bit.
Yeah.
You did. You did. You did.
You seriously want to drive to Baghdad?
David, we're gun runners. Let's go run some guns.
All right. So now I did watch an interview you did earlier. So you guys
Yeah.
actually didn't go through the Triangle of Death, right?
That's true. To
Okay.
everyone's great disappointment. we
Yeah,
did
because
not
I
grow-
mean, I was like, dude,
yeah.
that was insane.
Yeah.
So kind of
Yeah.
how did that? What was the reality
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, so that story is based on a true story. It's just not our story.
Got it.
So, while that story is actually based on something that happened to the screenwriter Stephen Chin. So so the reason he got the contract to write the War Dog script is because he had written another script called Iraq, which was based on these other two American guys who were in Iraq at the time that this was happening. And to write that script, he wanted to go into Iraq to meet them. But of course, he couldn't get a commercial ticket to Iraq. So he flew to Jordan and hired a Jordanian driver to drive him into Iraq to Baghdad. And he got shot at by insurgents and got saved by the U.S. Army, just like it shows in the movie.
Oh.
So that actually did happen to him. They did stop at Fallujah to get gas because it was free. and so while he was writing the script, Todd Phillips, who's the director of War Dogs, he told Steven, he's like, hey, there's just too much time of these guys just sitting in the office in front of computers. We need some action in this movie. Why don't you put your story where you went to Iraq into there? And so the Beretta deal, it was a real deal. That is based on truth. But in reality, we actually defaulted on that deal. We didn't deliver that deal like they show in the movie. So they changed that in order to put up more action.
And isn't that kind of insane that, like, I mean, I hate it because I love America. I'm the most patriotic guy in the world, and I love the fact that we have the world's greatest military. But dude, the fact that, again, that this is truly how some of our weapons were sourced. I mean, are there other war dogs? Y'all aren't the only ones. I mean, this is like,
Sure.
is it still going on? Is it still prevalent? There's still somewhere out there, just kind of these small shops bidding on these contracts and selling massive amounts of arms to different organizations. Is that still happening?
Yeah. I mean, that's still how it works.
That's
And,
crazy.
it's not just arms, it's everything.
Yeah.
My first contract was for 50,000 gallons of propane. And it was just totally random. And you could make so actually interesting that a little while ago, I was contacted by these two guys who, out of the blue, and they told me that they were super inspired by War Dogs to learn how to do government contracting.
Oh, I went on after I watched the movie the first time. I did
Yeah.
the same thing, David. I went on there. I was like, "Holy crap, this is real!" And I
Yeah.
actually was a partner in an infrastructure company. I'm like, I told my partner, I'm like, "Russell, do you realize that these contracts are out here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, they're there." I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So these two guys, they got really inspired by the movie, and they got obsessive about it, and they learned how to do government contracting, and they built a multi-million-dollar business supplying laundry services to the government. Just totally
Really?
random. Not that they had any background in laundry. It was just happened to be the contract that they happened to win, and then they built a reputation in that industry and were able to win further contracts. And so they built a whole multi-million-dollar business providing laundry services to the government. And so now actually we are working. So they had an idea. Hey, if we could learn how to do it, we could teach other people how to do it as well. So we are currently working together on what we are calling War Dogs University to
Nice.
teach people how to do government contracting. It's not out yet, but anyone who is interested in eventually being a part of that, you could follow me on social media and I'll make an announcement when it's ready.
I have got to connect you with. Are you familiar with James Altucher? Do you know who that is?
I don't offhand, no.
Oh man. Okay. So James Altucher, he's actually the host of my favorite podcast, multiple New York Times bestselling author. I mean, just the most badass kind of like Yoda of entrepreneurs there is out there. I love James. And first of all, you'd be an incredible guest on his show. He's a much better interviewer than I am, and he's he's amazing. And he's also he would love this story. And with you starting that business, James, I know would probably just clean it up, and he would give you infinite ideas on how to make that just blow up. And
Awesome.
so I hold me to that. I want to try to connect you guys. His producer Jay Yao and I are buddies, and Jay's just an awesome guy. So Jay, if you listen to this, I need you to help me out to get David and James connected. So, all right, well,
Sure.
so let's. All right, I want to finish out this trailer and just see if there's anything else I want to ask you about.
Hey, so come on, man.
You drove these through the triangle of death.
It did make for good film, dude.
Yeah.
The triangle of death?
Bro.
All right, so all right, I'll get back over here. All right, so there had to have been some moments where you were just going, what has my life become? I used to deliver trash I used to take trash out for $0.25 a bag and buy ice cream in Israel, and now I'm a gun runner.
Yeah.
Were you so in the moment that it's just like, okay, this became life, or was it constantly waking up in a sweat? I mean, just kind of paint the picture of what your life is like while this is going on.
Well, it was extremely hard work. So, one thing I'll give to Ephraim, though obviously we're not friends anymore, and he stole many millions of dollars from me. Is that, and he's screwed over many other people in his business career too.
Is he still in jail,
including-
by the way?
No, he's out.
out?
He's
Okay.
out. He's out and about, getting into lawsuits with people.
Oh, wow.
That's the all I hear about him these days is who's suing him and who he's suing. So that seems to be his business now. But he also stole millions of dollars from Ralph, the guy who was the investor who he had taken to that meeting and who had introduced him to Henry and many other people. I mean, that seems to be his pattern. He gets into business with someone and it always ends in tears. So it wasn't just me. But one thing I'll give him is that he was a obsessive workaholic and to an unhealthy degree. I mean, we would work, and when I would work with him, I picked up his habits and his work style. And so we would work like 18-hour days, like consistently for months on end. Just obsessive. Like we'd wake up I'd like stay over his house. I'd fall asleep on his couch. I'd wake up. And as soon as I'd wake up, we'd back to looking at the government website, calling people, trying to do deals and just like all day, like during meal times. He would take calls on the toilet. He would take calls like while having sex with his girlfriend. Like I'm like not even kidding. He would brag about it. He loved bragging about that. He'd love to say, it's like, yeah, I was just, getting a blowjob from my girlfriend. And then I got a call from the contracting officer in Iraq. And I said, don't stop, baby. This is important. This is important. Okay. This is business. You keep on doing that. And of course she hates it, but but she knows what side her bread is buttered on.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow.
So yeah. He would do that. And I think he got off on it, but yeah, I mean, that's just to say that he was a true workaholic obsessive, and it was extremely stressful. And so my life at the time was just a never ending, constant emergency from one thing to another. Something was always going wrong. There was always something that needed to be done now, or yesterday. So it was just like nonstop stress. And yeah, I mean, it was, I would say that the uh, the first moment that where I was like, what the hell am I getting myself into? Kind of moment, was about a month or so, 1 or 2 months into working with him. he got, we were working on separate things. We weren't like all both working on the same thing because like his idea was that I would, our deal was that I would work on contracts and pretty much do all the work up to the point where it was ready to be submitted to the government. And then he would help take all the bids and fill out the government paperwork and do some last minute negotiating with all the suppliers, which he was very good at. He's a very good negotiator. And then, you know, fund the deal and help, you know, do post-contract negotiations and so that we would squeeze the most money out of it. And of course, put everything under his company name. So, but I would do almost all the work beforehand. So, while we were each working on our own things but I worked right next to him. We were working out of his apartment in his living room. And he had a big desk filled with papers in his living room. And so I saw that he, you know, I heard him talking that he was working on this deal to supply the king of Nepal with heavy equipment. So the king of Nepal at the time was facing down a pro-democracy protest, and he was trying to suppress this movement. And so Ephraim, through some of his connections, got a request to supply the king of Nepal with attack helicopters and heavy machine guns and riot control gear and things of that nature that was meant to put down this movement. And he was working his ass off to get these things over to the king of Nepal. And I told him, like, Ephraim, this kind of like, you know, kind of messed up, you know, that you're trying to keep, he called it, he would laugh. He's like, oh, I'm working on the Save the King package. And I said, that's kind of messed up. You know, I mean, we're like, you know, I think we're Americans. We believe in democracy, and you're trying to save the king and help him oppress his people. And that's kind of pretty messed up. And I'm pretty sure that's illegal too, you know? And he goes to me, listen, bro, just you work on your fuel contract. I was working on fuel. You know, I told you my first contract was for 50,000 gallons of propane. He's like, you worry about your fuel contracts and let me deal with the king. All right. I'll take care of the king. Right.
So real quick, I want to ask you
yeah.
about that. So that's
Yeah.
a curiosity I had. So whenever you guys were doing a gun deal, did you take into consideration, I mean, like this, at this point, you would kind of
Yeah.
know the end user. So it wasn't kind of like James Bond Casino Royale where they're laundering money for warlords, or you guys, or like even the only other gun running movie that I really know, Lord of War, you know, about the
Yeah.
Merchant of Death, where you don't care who you're selling to, you're just dealing guns. It sounds like Ephraim was willing to do that, but you were trying to, and this is why I think it's important for the audience to know. It sounds like, and the movie makes it like you guys are just kind of on the edge of legality, because that kind of makes it more of kind of like I don't know, more exciting. But really, you guys were operating within the boundaries for the longest until this, and I'll let you describe it at the end, you know, where there's a technicality on where the ammunition comes from, that your son's in the military, that's kind of what blew the thing up on the $300 million contract. But like,
Right.
but you guys always knew who the end user was, and y'all would have those kind of conversations about, yeah, we shouldn't help these people, right? Is that what I'm
Yeah.
understanding?
So the way international arms deals work is that legally you are required to obtain a end user certificate, or EUC they call it, and that is a official document from the end user, from the people organization that is actually going to be using this equipment. You know, in our case, with the $300 million contract, from the Afghan National Army and police. So they would have to give an official stamp and a document that they are going to be the ones using this equipment, and they commit to not selling or giving this equipment to anyone else without the original supplier's permission. And that's how international arms are attempted to be controlled, of who gets it. If you don't have this end user certificate, that is an illegal arms deal. You're not allowed to do that deal. And usually, almost all countries require that you provide this end user certificate in order for the supplying country to provide an export permit, without which you are not allowed to export the items from that country. So for them to allow the exit of the stuff, you need to give them then the EUC, So you could fake it, right? There are criminals who fake these
Sure.
documents, and that's one way that it's done. But for it to be legal, obviously, you need these documents and you need to see who it's for. And as American citizens, additionally, you are required to have a broker's license from the State Department. And you have to register every individual deal with the State Department so that they know what is moving to who, from who, and to who. And they have to give their stamp of approval before you actually do that deal. So his deal with Nepal, I mean, it ended up falling through as he was very disappointed. He told me that unfortunately peace broke out. And so the deal fell through.
Peace broke out.
Yeah, peace broke out. That was the way
Wow.
he put it. Nothing worse for business than peace breaking out. And so that deal never ended up going through. But if he had done that deal, I mean, I never actually looked into it, but I am 99% sure that would have been denied by the State Department as far as deals that would have been allowed to go through. So if he had done that deal, that would have been a completely illegal deal that he could have gotten into a huge amount of trouble for. But he obviously had an extremely high risk tolerance and was willing to work on it.
All right, I got to ask you: are there some war
Yeah.
dogs right now just getting rich off Ukraine?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
I
mean,
gotta believe it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime there's large amounts of money being moved, someone's getting rich, right? And it's not necessarily everybody. I mean, the United States is giving Ukraine lots of stuff for free. In that case, those kind of deals, probably people aren't getting rich because it's just government to government transfers. But there's a lot more stuff that's going on besides that. So Ukraine is in a massive, one of the biggest ground war since World War II, which
Mhm.
chews up massive amounts of equipment and ammo and weapons and everything. And I mean, recently Ukraine just fired their defense minister, and specifically because there were some allegations of corruption within the Defense Department of Ukraine. And so, and Ukraine has a long history of problems with corruption. That's something that they've been struggling with for a very long time, as do all the former Soviet republics. The Soviet Union, it could be argued, collapsed because of endemic corruption. So all their former Soviet satellites have that cultural baggage, including Ukraine, which they're working very hard to address. I mean, they're not going to be led into NATO and into the EU unless they solve their corruption problems. So they have very significant incentives to fix their corruption issues. But for sure, things are happening there for sure.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I got to believe that someone that is high up in the government in
Hmm.
Ukraine, obviously the end user agreements are going to get signed by the State
Hmm.
Department, everybody to sell to Ukraine. But once it's in Ukraine and there's some dude that has access to the weapons that can then sell them wherever, I
Hmm.
just, you can, and then there's really, I mean,
Hmm.
we like to think that there's a way for the State Department or the United States to keep a
Hmm.
track, keep a, kind of a paper trail or whatever. But once it gets over,
Hmm.
like it's kind of like the whole deal with Afghanistan, where you would hear about
Hmm.
the airplane hangars with pallets of cash
Right.
one day, and then literally with that night gone, and nobody knows where
Sure.
it went.
Sure.
It's just that's one of the things that was so fascinating about the movie and the story that you guys were the subject of was just that there's just this is going on all the time.
Mhm.
It's just kind of mind blowing that, oh my gosh, this is real. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, there's massive amounts of money, and anytime there's massive amounts of money moving around, there's always some level of
Oh yeah.
corruption. And that's why the United States has law enforcement agencies dedicated to catching people who engage in these things, because otherwise, very little of the money would actually go where it needs to go, and the whole system would collapse because it's just not running efficiently.
So now let's get to what finally brought you guys down.
Mhm.
You inked the $300 million contract, right? This is the one that
Yeah.
with the problems we're in, right? The big one.
Yeah. Correct.
So you ink this, and I got to believe if I'm you, I'm thinking, wow, I've just retired myself if I decide to.
Yeah.
What a great feeling
Yeah.
that is. Yeah. And
Mhm.
you've gone through the stress of a baby girl on the way, all this. And now you're
Mhm.
like, okay, dealing with Ephraim and all his nonsense. It's about to pay
Mhm.
off. But then it comes crashing down. Why? What happened?
So the $300 million contract was for munitions, and it wasn't for weapons themselves. It was for all the munitions that went in the weapons. It was everything. It's, I think, something like 30 different items, like everything from pistol ammo all the way up to anti-aircraft rockets and mortar rounds and tank shells. So it was a huge amount of stuff. And some of the stuff we were supplying was the ammunition for the AK-47, the standard assault rifle of the Warsaw Pact, which is what the Afghans used. Um, and the ammunition that we sourced for this, we found through our connection with Henry Tomei, who's the guy played by Bradley Cooper in the movie. We found a huge supply in Albania for very, very cheap. And when we sent someone to inspect it, we found out why it was so cheap. Because unbeknownst to us at the time, until we inspected it, it had originally come from China. And because Albania had been in alliance with China during the Cold War, and so they got a whole bunch of military equipment from China for free. Um, and of course, the hot war never came. And so that they had all this ammo and various other military equipment just lying around collecting dust. Albania wanted to join NATO. And so therefore, one of NATO's rules was that you have to get rid of all your old Warsaw Pact ammo and weapons. So they had to pay to get it destroyed. And so they were thrilled to sell it for anything because it saves them money from having to pay for it to be destroyed. And they also make money on the sale. So we got a really good deal on it. Then we discovered it originally comes from China, which our contract with the U.S. Army specifically said no Chinese ammunition could be delivered either directly or indirectly. And the reason they put that in there was because there's currently, ever since 1989, there's an arms embargo against China. In 1989, there was the Tiananmen Square massacre, which there was a big pro-democracy protest movement in Beijing, and by a bunch of like thousands of college students in the main square of the city called Tiananmen Square, and the Chinese government rolled in tanks and pretty much killed everybody, or killed hundreds, if not thousands, of people just in a huge massacre. And this was done on like live TV. So it was something that the whole world saw and became a huge political thing. And to punish the Chinese government and army for doing that, the U.S. put China on an arms embargo list. So it was illegal. So it's still currently illegal for U.S. Citizens and companies to buy or sell military equipment with Chinese companies. So because of that, they put this requirement on our contract that we couldn't supply any Chinese ammo. Now, the thing is that our contract did not say you can't supply Chinese ammo that violates the embargo. They just said you can't supply Chinese ammo for this contract. And if you had bought Chinese ammo or weapons in 1988 while it was legal and imported it into the United States, that ammo and weapons would still remain legal even in 1990 because it was bought when it was legal. You'd still be able to resell it. So the ammo in Albania had been given to the Albanians in the 70s, and while it was legal. So we figured, hey, this ammo does not violate the embargo, so it should be allowed under our contract. But our contract specifically says that no Chinese ammo can be delivered, period. So we have a choice. We could either go to the army and say, hey guys, we have this ammo that doesn't violate the embargo, but it does violate the technical terms of our commercial contract. Can you guys give us an exemption? And they could have said, yeah, sorry about that. We wrote the contract bad. We meant to put in a reference to the embargo, but we didn't. So here's an exemption. Please deliver the ammo. We really need the ammo. Or they could have said something along the lines of, we thought at the time, they could have said something along the lines of like, well, you know, the requirement to deliver against Chinese was put out there for all your competitors to bid on. So they couldn't bid this. If your competitors were doing the right thing, they couldn't have bid on this ammo because it was Chinese. So it's not fair that you guys get to keep this $300 million contract because you guys had an unfair advantage. And so we're going to take this $300 million contract away from you and put it out for bid on the open market again. And we thought, if we tell them we risk losing a $300 million contract, maybe we shouldn't tell them.
Wow.
And so we hired some Albanian company to repackage the ammunition. So it got rid of all the Chinese markings on the boxes, and there was like Chinese documents inside the cases. And we repackaged it into these thick cardboard boxes and wrapped in plastic to prevent from corrosion, and started delivering that. And the Army was thrilled with the ammo. They kept on taking delivery. And then Ephraim, what really got us in trouble was that Ephraim was trying to save money on the contract. And so he decided to switch packaging companies to change to someone else who was going to save him money. And the guy who was originally doing the repackaging contract for us got stuck with $20,000 worth of cardboard boxes and asked Ephraim to pay him for it. Ephraim said, yeah, I'll pay you for it. But of course he never did, because that's just how he rolls. And so he screwed him out of 20 grand. That guy got really mad and went to the New York Times and told them everything we were doing. And he went to the FBI and told them everything we were doing. And so the US government opened up an investigation. And at the time, this was like in June of 2007. And then he of course, looking to screw everyone over. So he told, and the contract was going well. So he told me that he didn't feel like I was holding up my end of the work. And so he didn't feel like he owed me any money. And so I told him, well, in that case, I'll see you in court and go fuck yourself. And so I left the company. And about 2 months later, there was a raid by the federal agents, raided his office and took all the documents and all his, everything. They found a to-do list on his desk that said repackaged Chinese ammo in his handwriting.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
It's like a Fredo
And-
move.
Yeah, for real. And it came out later that they had informed the Justice Department, informed the U.S. Army that this stuff was all Chinese, and the U.S. Army emailed them back. This is all in emails because it came out in court later. The U.S. Army emailed the Justice Department saying, "Hey, this ammo is mission critical, and if you want us to stop taking delivery on it, we need a letter from the Attorney General of the United States requesting that we stop taking delivery on this." And that letter never came. So they kept on taking delivery of the Chinese ammo for another 6 months after that, until the New York Times published their front page article. And that front page article had our mug shots on the front page, Ephraim and my mug shots. We did not look great. And it was right next to a picture of rusty looking ammunition, corroded ammunition. And the New York Times said that we were just a couple of kids who didn't know what we were doing. They found out somehow that we smoked weed. So they called us, like our nickname in the media became the Stoner Arms Dealers. And, the New York Times portrayed it as like the Bush administration is just so incompetent that they give a couple of stoners a $300 million contract, and the entire war on terror in Afghanistan is relying on these couple of stoner kids.
Wait, you're saying the New York Times would sensationalize a story to create a narrative? Come on. No way.
I was actually a fan of the New York Times until they wrote about me. So
I bet there's a lot of people that could say that.
Show you. That's probably true. Yeah. So they implied that all the ammo that we were delivering was rusty and defective, and it wasn't true. The picture of the ammunition that they had on the front page was actually of Bulgarian ammo. It wasn't even the Chinese Albanian stuff that we were delivering. and it was like 30,000 rounds out of like 180 million. So it was a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent that they had inspected and rejected because it was, the Army inspects stuff before they accept it and pay you for it. So they had inspected it. They saw that this stuff was crap because the seals were broken. So there was corrosion that got in there. And so they rejected it. They didn't pay us for it. But because it's Afghanistan, they had nowhere to put the rusty ammo. So they just stuck it to the side of the airport. And when the New York Times came to investigate, and they started asking around, can I see some of the ammo that AEY has been delivering? Someone pointed them at that stuff that they had rejected because it was the only stuff that hadn't been issued to troops at the time. So it was around for them to inspect. So that was the stuff that they got pictures of. That was the stuff that the reporter saw. And they kind of implied that that was everything that we were delivering was like that. So this created a huge scandal. And almost immediately, within a few days, the Army put out a statement saying that they had no idea that this was going on, and that they were taking the contract away from us or from Ephraim, because I wasn't with the company anymore at this point. And then the Justice Department charged us with fraud after 6 months of doing nothing, right? Because the Army needed the ammo. But now that there was a big political stink and everyone was embarrassed because the New York Times, suddenly they charged us with fraud. And they claimed that every document that we supplied claiming that the ammo was from Albania was an act of fraud, and we had supplied 71 aircraft loads of this ammo. So that's 71 documents that we had signed that this stuff had originally come from Albania. And so therefore 71 counts of fraud, each with up to 5 years in prison. So we could get up to 355 years in prison unless we would plead guilty, and then they would combine it into one. And then we can get 5 years maximum unless, and since we pled guilty, they would recommend to the judge that we get on the low end of the sentencing guidelines. So maybe 1 year, maybe just probation. So those were our options. You either get probation by plead guilty, or you can get 355 years in prison if you fight us in court.
And you ended up under house arrest, right?
Yeah. So I pled guilty, obviously, because that was my only option.
Right.
Even if I wanted to fight them in court, which would have been a bad idea, I didn't have the money to fight them in court because Ephraim had stolen all the money from me. He didn't pay me anything that he owed me. And I was working on a commission-only basis and living off my life savings while this was happening. So I didn't really have the option. So I pled guilty. I ended up I was obviously scared shitless because I was looking at possibly decades of my life in prison. And so I pled guilty, and I got sentenced to 7 months of house arrest, which I feel extremely lucky and grateful that was only that.
So, David, here's the business takeaway as I see it. Next time, instead of hiring a repackager, you just hire a good lobbyist. That's what you guys needed. Let's be real. You just needed a good lobbyist.
Yeah,
and
that is actually true.
And that's so the listener knows the story you just heard. You hear about these things called lobbyists right there. This is the kind of stuff that they make all these things okay. So,
yeah.
Well, but I do want to ask a serious question, man, because you're still an entrepreneur. I want to know what you're working on now. War Dog University. I want to hear a little bit more about that and just other things that you've done. But looking back on this harrowing tale, this crazy tale that was so crazy that it became a blockbuster movie. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
I don't think I've done anything worthy of a movie just yet. I still got some time. But what are the lessons learned as an entrepreneur and building a business, decisions that you've learned that you would make differently next time? Kind of just tell the listener as a mentor, and what would you do differently, and some good lessons learned from all this.
Well, I would say that the biggest lesson I learned is that it is so critical about who you work with. Because I told myself at the time, hey, this guy, Ephraim, he knows how to make millions of dollars, and I don't. So I'm going to learn all the business secrets from him. And yes, I have all these warning signs that he's a kind of a sociopath and a scumbag, and he seems to screw over everyone that he comes in contact with. But But I'm his best friend, and like we grew up together, and so he wouldn't do that to me, right? And anyway, I'll just put up with him for a year or two or three, and make a whole bunch of money, and then I'll retire, and I'll be set. And that was my thinking at the time, and I think it was, looking back, it was probably a reasonable thing to think, but I think that you don't realize that destructive people can be really destructive. You think that they could just be a little bit annoying sometimes and you could put up with them and deal with it. But people who are destructive and take massive risks like that, and are dishonest and screw people left and right, they could bring a lot more problems into your life than you are willing to handle, and that is worth the upside. So, I thought, oh, he's just like an annoying guy to deal with that I'll just put up with in order to learn the business and make money. But I didn't realize, hey, this guy could land me in prison for the rest of my life, and if he's screwing over all his other business partners, why wouldn't he screw me out of all the money? What makes me think I'm special? So I think that the most important thing is, if you don't like the person that you're working with, they're really not worth working with, because, not only because on a day-to-day level, it's just going to make you miserable, right? You work with someone you don't like, it's just a miserable experience, and you're not going to enjoy your work. And if you're not enjoying your work, you're not going to put all you can into it, because people don't tend to do things that they don't enjoy. Um, so now, I mean, some people have a higher tolerance for the grind, they call it, right? Being able to do things that are difficult and not pleasant. And I definitely was grinding for quite a bit and almost ground myself down to the bone. Um, but more than just that, I think that you don't realize all the potential downsides that can happen, as happened to me, right? Because when you are dealing with someone who takes such massive risks, that could end you up in legal trouble, and legal trouble could truly destroy your life. I mean, not only could it make you go bankrupt because you'll spend all your money defending yourself to keep you out of prison, but in a worst case scenario, I mean, you could spend the rest of your life in prison, and no amount of money is worth that. No amount of money is worth being stuck in a cell for years on end. I would not, even if it's not the rest of your life, I would not take any amount of money to spend 5 years in prison, right? Because that is something you're never going to get back.
Sure.
And so, I had a baby on the way, and I realized I could miss my kid growing up, and I'll never get that back. And she will never get her father back for all those years. And there's really no amount of money that is worth that. So, that's the biggest lesson that I took away from that, is that it's so critical to really think long and hard about who you're working with, and think about if this is the kind of person that you want to be associated with and dealing with day to day, and do you trust this person to make important decisions for you, and for the people around you, because it's an enormous part of your life. So that would be the biggest thing that I took away. On a positive aspect, um, it did teach me, and I'll give Ephraim, for all the bad things I say about him, right? I give him credit, is that he was one of the hardest working people that I ever met, and that translated directly into his success, into our success. The more you work, usually, not always, but usually, the more success you have, right? They say the harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that a big part of our success was that we were willing to work harder than most of our competitors. And, most of our competitors had normal lives, and they worked 9 to 5, and they'd clock out, at the end of the day. And we were just obsessives, and we worked ourselves to the bone, and we worked 18-hour days, and we would go, instead of doing a Google search for suppliers and stopping at, like, the fourth or the fifth page, we'd go 20, 30 pages in, and just like literally try to outwork our competitors. And that's a huge aspect of success, is how much work you're willing to put into something. It has a very direct effect on whether you succeed or not. And so that would be the other major aspect of it. The third major aspect is just on a rather um, on a more broad sense. Uh, uh, not only is it important to think about who you're working with, but it's also very important to think about what you're doing and what kind of work you're doing and whether that appeals to you as a person, right? Because for me, I realized that the work itself of government contracting, for me personally, it wasn't particularly interesting, right? I mean, sure, I loved making money, right? But it's really just glorified logistics, right? You know, you are looking for suppliers and logistics, and you're putting it all together, and you're rolling the dice. There's a lot of I mean, every business is a roll of the dice, right? But when you're bidding on government contracting, you're literally hoping that you have the best deal for the government and they pick you. And if they don't, then all that work you did to get the best price and work out the logistics, that all goes to waste. Now, in that kind of business, you could work on 10 deals and only win one, and that one makes you enough money that it makes all the times that you lost worth it. And it takes a certain kind of person to be able to deal with those kinds of ups and downs in the business. And I realized that that is a good business and you could make a lot of money, and it appeals to certain personality types. Um, but for me personally, I wanted to do something else after. I mean, maybe it was because I was burnt out. And if I didn't have such a harrowing, emotional experience, traumatic, I should say, experience with the business, I would have a better emotional reaction to it. But that's really why I never got back into it, was because I had such a traumatic experience doing it. I think that I just have a emotional resistance to doing that kind of work now, which is why I shifted into other businesses afterwards. There's also, of course, the fact that I was legally barred from doing business with the U.S. government for 10 years, so I legally could not do it, even if I wanted to, which has expired now. I legally can do business again, but I've already built my current businesses, which I don't know.
Yeah, tell me about that. I see Singular Sound. Yeah,
yeah, Singular Sound is right behind me. There's for the people who are just listening to this.
Yeah.
There's a poster behind me with a picture of a product called the BeatBuddy.
Yeah.
And Gizmodo called it, as there's a big quote on the top, a genius idea, right?
Nice.
You know, they said it, not me.
So what is the BeatBuddy?
I did put it on a poster though.
As you should.
So yes. So the way I got, so it actually started, fittingly enough, from my time in house arrest. That's how I got into my next business. I was, as I mentioned before, I was sentenced to 7 months of house arrest, which I feel very grateful that it wasn't more than that. I had a little ankle tracking monitor on my ankle, you know, as you do with house arrest, so I couldn't leave the house. But it's not like a COVID style lockdown. People could visit you. So I've always been a musician since I was like 15. I've been playing guitar, always been a singer since I was a kid. So I'd have my friends come over. A lot of my friends are musicians. We jam, you know, to pass the time. But I really missed playing with the drummer, because the drums give the music the beat, right? You dance to the beat in music, and so it gives the energy to the music. But of course, no drummer's going to pack up his whole drum set and bring it over my house just to jam, because that's a huge pain in the butt. And of course, it would wake up all my neighbors. They would not be happy with someone playing the drums in my apartment. So I bought a drum machine, which is an electronic device that goes on the table, has a lot of buttons. Each button makes a different drum hit sound, and you can make beats on it and play it back in a loop. So you have a beat going, and then you could play your guitar to it. But every time I wanted the beat to change, I'd have to stop playing my guitar, press a button on the drum machine, go back to playing my guitar, which interrupted the flow of the music. So I thought I need a drum machine that's in a pedal format that can go on the floor and I could control the beat hands-free while I play my guitar. And I went online to look for it, but nobody made anything like it. So I made it. It's called the BeatBuddy, like your buddy that plays
Nice.
the beat. And it's the world's first drum machine guitar pedal hybrid. And launched my company, Singular Sound, to produce this. And since then, it became a huge success. It's won all the major awards. That's also, I have pictures of on
Yeah.
the poster. Not that you could see them that well, but won pretty much every major award in the musical products industry, the musical instruments industry. Has done very well. A lot of famous musicians have been using it. It's actually one of the coolest experiences of my life, I think. Besides the whole War Dogs thing, in my current life, I should say, was that. So I'm a huge. I grew up in the '90s, so
hmm
I'm a huge grunge fan.
Same. Same.
Yeah, I learned to play guitar, listening to Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains. Um, and
Yes.
the bassist from Alice in Chains, his name is Mike Inez.
hmm
He comes up to me at a trade show, and this was like the second year, I think, when we were had just come out with the Beat Buddy. He comes up to me at a trade show, and he looks at me. He's like, "Hey, you're the guy who came out with the Beat Buddy." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, man, I just bought one 2 months ago. I've been writing all my new music using it."
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
I know.
That's
And I was like,
so cool.
yeah, I was like, "Dude, I learned to play guitar listening to your music. Like, your songs is how I learned how to play guitar." It just blew my mind. It was the coolest thing. And he loved it so much. He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna be playing in Miami." I'm based in Miami. So he's like, "We're gonna be playing in Miami this summer." He's like, he gave me his number. He's like, "I'll get you backstage." And I got to meet the whole band. It was so fucking cool. Yeah. It was
That
so
is that is and you know, one
yeah.
of the things I hear from that
Yeah.
too, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
freaking
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
And obviously, we grew up in the same era, so the best music era, as
Yeah.
far as I still remember the first
I agree.
time so I graduated high school in '93, so it was around '92, '93. I hear Alive the first time from
Oh, yeah.
Pearl Jam,
Pearl
and then
Jam, yeah.
the whole 10 album is just
Amazing.
stupid. It's
Yeah.
so good, every
One
song
of one of the
that
best ever. Yeah.
ever. So, and
Yeah.
then of course,
Yeah.
whenever I discovered
Mhm.
Alice in Chains, Down in a
Mhm.
Hole, and all those, just
Amazing song, yeah.
yeah. So, but what I hear too though is
Mhm.
dude, that's why I started this conversation the way I did. You're just a serial entrepreneur. You can't go do a 9 to 5. That would be worse than house arrest for
Yeah,
you. Is that fair to
I
say?
agreed. Absolutely, I would hate to work a 9 to 5. I
Yeah.
really would. Yeah. I'm actually, so I've got 2 new business ventures that I wanna talk about before we
Go for it,
wrap
brother.
up. So my latest, just to say to finish up with the Beat Buddy.
Yeah.
So Singular Sound, which is my music company that makes the Beat Buddy, we've also come out with 6 additional products. We've come out with this is only going to really matter to the musicians in the audience, but we came out with a MIDI foot controller, so you could control the Beat Buddy and do a lot more stuff with it, like halftime, double time, a lot of other things. And we also came out with the world's most advanced looping pedal called the Aeros Loop Studio. It's the world's first looping pedal that has a touch screen on it that you can actually see the music being recorded in waveforms, which makes looping a lot easier. It also does both sequential and parallel looping at the same time. Only looping artists are going to know what I'm talking about, but that's okay. Anyway, but recently launched a new company with my brother for our first non-musical product, which is called InstaFloss, which is the world's first device that flosses all of your teeth for you in 10 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So you can check it out on instafloss.com. We just started delivering the first units to customers literally 2 weeks ago. So I'm super excited about it. We've been
I'm
working
going
on
to
this
look
for
this up right now. Keep
yeah,
talking.
yeah. We've been working on it for 5 years. So it's been quite a journey. And this is our first product that is meant for the general market, meaning, I love musicians. I'm a musician, of course. I am forever grateful to the musician community, but unfortunately, it's a lot smaller than I would like it to be. And so it's like maybe only like 1% of the population would be interested in buying a BeatBuddy or a advanced looping pedal. But InstaFloss, everybody has teeth. Everybody needs to floss. Everybody hates flossing. And so my brother and I, we designed a machine that uses 12 water jets to floss all 4 quadrants of your mouth at the same time. And so it can floss your entire teeth in 10 seconds. So
Dude, you know what?
Right
Okay.
there is
It's
how
it's
it works.
great. I'm going to buy one, and I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
In case you probably noticed, I'm 48 years old with freaking braces.
Yeah.
My bite is so jacked up that if I want to have teeth when I'm older, then I had to get braces. So I wear braces for a year, then I have to get my
Oh,
jaw
wow.
broken and reset, and then I have to wear them for
Whoa.
yeah. And
Jeez.
and one of the worst
harsh.
parts, oh dude, it's horrible. And I
Yeah.
put it off for 20 years. So I'm like, yeah, I would really think it'd be cool to be old and have teeth. And so
Yeah, for real.
so I'm going
Yeah.
through it. But this is
Yeah.
perfect for people with braces, dude.
It is. It is
Holy
perfect for
crap.
pieces of-
You need to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
rolling up on orthodontists left and right. This
Oh,
is
we are.
amazing.
We are. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we actually have we're in talks with a company that supplies dentists and orthodontists offices with equipment, and they are going to buy massive amounts of these and put them in all the offices. But it's primarily a consumer item. So this
Yeah.
is intended for people to have at home and use, instead of having to use your string floss or a water pick, which is the current water flossing device, is much more difficult to use because
Yep.
it's a single jet of water.
Yep.
And you have to like aim it.
That's what
at
I'm
your-
using right now
at your-
because yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the thing with the water pick, the most difficult part about it is getting behind the teeth and
Mhm.
pointing outwards and getting the right angle, because you need to be at a 90-degree angle to the gum line. Because if you point into the gum line, it irritates your gums and makes it inflamed. And if you point away from the gum line, it doesn't do an effective job flossing. So the angle is very important, and it's very difficult to do that with a standard water pick. And that's why we designed the InstaFloss, because all the angles are perfectly held in place. All you have to do is bite into the device, slide it across your teeth, and it gives you a perfect floss every time.
Dude, and you've solved one of those problems that's just like
Yeah.
universally hated. No one likes to floss. I've never run into anyone
Yeah.
who said, you know what I can't wait to do is go home and floss tonight. That's just I
Exactly.
freaking love to rip up some
Exactly.
floss.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Exactly it. Yeah,
But see,
that's
and it-
actually, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and it just feeds back into what I was saying. So you're 6 years old in Israel, taking out garbage. Then
Yeah.
you're selling bed
Yeah.
sheets and linens at senior living facilities. Then you're dealing arms all over the globe, and now you're flossing teeth and solving drummer problems.
Yeah.
Freaking man, it's that.
Yeah.
Seriously, that is so awesome. I mean, seriously,
thank you.
David, well done,
Yeah.
dude.
And War Dogs University is coming.
And
up.
War Dogs University, which, by the way,
Yes.
I'm excited to hear about that, and I
Yeah.
want to. That's probably
Mhm.
something. Let's stay in touch on that, and
Yeah.
I've got to get you hooked up with Altucher. Hopefully, you guys can
Mhm.
connect because he would love you. You're like his.
Mhm.
He actually, I was on his show a while back where he does like every once in a while he'll do a mentoring show where he like
Mhm.
takes business, entrepreneurs or whatever, and shares his
Mhm.
experiences. And that's just his genius. Which, by the way, any of his books, like Choose Yourself, Skip the Line, you would totally love them. I mean, you've lived it. You're like me. You live the stuff. So when you read it by someone like him, it hits home. But
Awesome.
I think that it would be one of the best episodes ever to have you on one of his mentoring shows, just for you guys to just riff on business and ideas. So I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to make the pitch for it. And
All right. I
so,
would love to.
yeah. And what am I going to pay for this? What's it called? What was it? The dental,
InstaFloss?
the InstaFloss.
InstaFloss.
Yeah. What do I pay for
Yeah.
that?
So it's $199.
Oh, okay. That's a
Yeah.
great price point. All right.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, this is okay. So, and where can people keep up with you, learn more about you, follow up on War Dog U? I want to know about that. Where can people keep in touch with you, David?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, War Dogs University, for people who are interested in learning how to do government contracting, is something that I'm currently working on. Hopefully it'll be launched in the next few months. I don't have an exact timeline on it, but I'm working with partners who were inspired by my story to start their own government contracting business, and they've done extremely well. And they were always very grateful for the inspiration, which is why they contacted me, and we had the idea to work together and help other people get into the business. So that is something that we are currently working on and hope to launch in the next few months. So people who would like to be informed when that launches, probably the best thing to do is just to follow me on social media. I'll make an announcement. I'm most active on Instagram, though I'm not like a big social media guy, but occasionally I post on Instagram, even less occasionally on X, formerly Twitter.
Yeah.
And so if you just look for both platforms, X and Instagram, you could find me at David Packouz, just my name, David Packouz, that's Packouz. And that's how you just look up for that handle and you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, David, this is a blast, man. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for giving us the story behind the movie and the behind the story, and then just
My pleasure.
your fascinating life, dude. I mean, it's great, and I
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best of luck. I hope we stay in touch, man. I love having these stories. Anything I can do to support you in your entrepreneurial endeavors, brother, I'm here for it. So just stay in touch.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother, I appreciate it. All right.